If you follow along on this channel, you realize that I'm not a huge fan of AIOs. They never really amount to the level of cooling that you get with a custom loop. So why am I sitting here with a 120 millimeter AIO for that matter? Well, I've got a small form factor build. Let's try to cram it in this case. It's going to be tight. We might have a little bit of fun in the process. Check it out. Welcome back to another episode of Chadrick's Tech. In this episode, we're going to focus a little bit, it's a little bit of a departure from what I'm normally presenting here in terms of builds and GPU benchmarks. I'm going to look at my media device, and it usually runs the AV equipment that you see behind me on the videos. And I had a different system in that situation, but I wanted to downgrade the case and make it something smaller, tighter, fit in to the office here a little better. And if you remember, I put together a budget system, and that was a system that used a smaller motherboard. I was trying to prove that you didn't have to spend top dollar on all the latest hardware and still have a system that you can enjoy. That video's out there. It's the budget system, and I'm using the CPU from that system with an ITX motherboard. It's an i5 12th gen. It's a 12500 KF, I believe. And that's more than enough to run just simple AV equipment in these office tasks, just to help support the channel and getting videos and content out to you. It may pull some double duty with a second camera or something. I haven't really decided how much I really want to delve into its use, but it actually has a good use that you see behind us. So it's a brand new build. Still says activate Windows. We'll get to that. I'll pay for it. So what I want to do is I put it together with a Cooler Master fan. I was not going to do anything water or anything fancy. I was just going to try to because it doesn't generate a lot of heat. I mean, it's an older tech, but it's still plenty fast. So what I ended up using was the 2080 that I purchased. If you've looked at my 80 and 90 series performance videos and the generational leap that you get in the 80 class and the 90 class cards, this is the 2080 that I featured on the channel. Put it to good use. Thinking that it was an outdated card, it might still be faster than the B580 that I just tested. Just, throwing that out there. So I'm using this 2080 and the 12th gen CPU. It was around $115 just for the CPU, and a reasonable board, an ASRock. I believe it's an ASRock board with 32 gigabytes of memory. It's still a reasonable system. I could throw things in this system and it would do a decent job at 1080p. The budget system information's out there. When I did the budget system, I was actually using the RTX 5070, and it ran great. I was pretty pleased with its performance, honestly. But what I tried to do in terms of cooling the CPU, because it has a 200 millimeter fan in the front, and I was just going to try to get away with a basic air cooler. And this one from Cooler Master, if you notice, there's not a lot of surface area here on the bottom, but I thought, how big does it really have to be? It'll be okay. Basic mounting mechanism, it bolted up okay, and it ran all right. I ran it for a little bit about a week, trying to evaluate what I thought of it, and it just, you run our Cinebench or something with any level of difficulty, and you just sort of sit it for 10 minutes, it throttled. The 12th gen CPU throttled, and I thought, well, it's not throwing a bunch of heat, and if I tuck this away to run the system and there's limited airflow, I don't have any faith that I'm really going to be able to keep these components cool, and it's time to rethink the plan, right? And so enter Thermalright, and thought I would just check out their AIO. Now, this particular case is Thermaltake. It's a Core V1, and I have a lot of Thermaltake cases. Thermaltake, if you're listening, I'm supporting the program. I'm supporting the business. That really, they're excellent cases. I've built in other cases, and they're well thought out cases. Now, this one, I think we could have tweaked it a little bit differently. But when you look at the manual, it says that you can put a radiator in the front. If you put a radiator in the front, my understanding is you'll lose the main fan, the 200 millimeter fan that is blowing toward the rear of the case. And that's the main airflow. And then I ended up buying some Thermalright 80 millimeter fans for the rear of the case. There's only two 80, and they look so tiny, right? 80 millimeter fans right now, looking really, really small compared to the fans that we're using these days. And there are two fans toward the rear, and there's only enough height, the way they designed this case, for the maximum CPU cooler to be 140 millimeters tall. When I was doing some research, I had to use a cooler like this. I really couldn't find one that would be more of the upright, traditional, larger, get multiple fans in there and blow across all the fins. I was going to just use a basic, like the Peerless Assassin, all those ones that stand upright. Even if I was using 120 millimeter fans, by the time you put the pipes and everything, they were over 140 millimeters, and then it wouldn't work in this situation. And I actually took a chance and tried a couple, trying to get it in the case, and they just don't work. So enter an AIO. So I went with Thermalright. This little device right here surprised me. It does a pretty good job for what it is. And the question was, where was I going to put this thing? And I think what we'll do is, let me bring in a little closer. Let's peek around in the case here. We'll talk through how I had to set it up and what fits and what doesn't fit. But it says in the manual that you can only put a radiator in the front. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. It fits on the side. And it bolts directly to the chassis without having to modify the holes. A 120 millimeter fan lines up, and it just clears the board memory on the inside. And so let me go ahead and get you oriented. This is the case front. This has got the 200 millimeter fan blowing front to rear. I ended up mounting the AIO onto the side of the panel, and it bolts right up to the side panel. It does not require modifications, drilling, anything. The holes actually line up with the perforations in the case quite nicely. And then the perforations on this side, you've got your GPU, right? So you got your 2080, you got your 12th gen CPU, an ITX build, your top of the line a few years ago, right? But 200 millimeter coming in, 280s going out. That's how I was going to set my air cooler. When I realized I was going AIO, I could have flipped these around and pressurized the case a little bit and made the air need to go out. But it works just fine the way it is. It didn't throttle. It was cooling. You can see how much space you have. It's very tight, right? I had to take the brackets out. There's no modification needed. I had to take the brackets out that hold the 3.5-inch hard drives. There were two brackets on the side of the case. Don't need those. I'm running an SSD on the board. And this is the ASRock ITX Wi-Fi 790. And the only issue that I had getting this to mount up is that I didn't twist and push my cables into place. I mounted the pump and CPU block first before I got these twisted all into place. But when you're putting these brackets onto the motherboard, the 4 bolts that hold the brackets, that allow you to screw the pump to the CPU, there's a little bit of wiggle room in play there. And so if you tighten them down and you don't have them set in the right spots, then you can't get the CPU, the two CPU bolts started. And that was my issue. I was struggling with that. So what I had to do was loosen these four just a little bit to give me a little bit of wiggle room so that I can hit these two studs on here to get them to get the pump to cinch down. As soon as I got threads to start going, I tightened the four in the crisscross pattern to cinch it to the board, and then I took the two for the CPU down into place. Once I had that squared away, I went ahead and mounted this directly onto the side of the case. Now, there's still plenty of room. It's not as, it's a little restrictive, right? Because it's mounted to the side plate. But you could take this off and service this if you needed to. It still comes, the side panel still goes off and on, and you can still use it. So with that being said, this really does work, and because it's so custom, Thermaltake probably didn't want to say that this was possible, because this is, I don't know if this is a one-off or whatever, but in this configuration, it works. So, and I'm overall very happy with how this turned out. So there you have it. It actually works great. I run it through its paces. I did a performance test with it just to see if it would throttle with the performance test. It's a shorter test. That's the safer run at first. And then I threw the heavy hitter at it and threw a Cinebench R23 for the 10-minute throttling test, and it didn't throttle. I mean, the temperatures went up. You put your hand in front of the fan, it's throwing some air, throwing some hot air, but it did not throttle, and I'm very pleased with its performance overall. So this is going to serve me really well in terms of running the media machine behind me and to help with the channel moving forward. So this is going to be the setup. I just thought that you guys, if you're trying to consider us, there are other small form factor cases, but I wanted to give a shout out to Thermaltake that you can actually get a 120 millimeter AIO if you time this correctly and take out the hard drive cages in the front. I'm using an SSD attached to the board, so didn't need those cages, and I used that space for the smaller AIO. I tried to get a 240 in there. It ain't having it. So the 120 with the extra tubing and length of the radiators is about all you can fit. Hope you find this interesting. Enjoy modding those cases out there for you. Let me know what works for you and what you think of Thermalright. Overall, I think it's a really cost-effective, affordable, and great product that they've got. So with that, more to come. Stay safe. God bless.